Hello, everyone, and welcome to my capstone presentation. My name is Sophia Bender, and the title of my presentation is Climate Collaboration: How Jurisdictions Can Strengthen Local Climate Action. Local governments are taking greater responsibility for climate policy as a tool to address the increasing impacts of climate change. New legislation, such as House Bill 1181 in Washington state, requires jurisdictions to update their planning documents to include more resiliency measures. However, varying capacities and resources in different jurisdictions create inequities in the implementation of climate policies. Therefore, this project evaluated approaches to achieve consistent and effective climate action. This led to my research question, which was, what are barriers for local jurisdictions to engage in more effective collaborative climate action, and how can these barriers be overcome? So next I'll be discussing my internship and methods. So for my capstone, I worked with Pierce County Planning and Public Works, where I compiled a list of over 2,000 climate policies from the planning documents of 22 different jurisdictions in Pierce County. The image to the right shows Pierce County's most updated climate action plan, which served as a baseline comparison for other jurisdictions' policies and climate action plans. For each of the 22 jurisdictions, I analyzed each policy, identified particularly strong policies using a scoring criteria that I developed, and I created a model policy about tree canopy. I also conducted a survey and interviews with staff and elected officials from Pierce County to learn more about the policy landscape and current collaboration efforts. Finally, I researched scholarly work and climate action plans from other jurisdictions in Washington. Moving on to my findings, I found three major barriers from my research that prevent effective collaboration in Pierce County jurisdictions, and those were limited staff capacity, financial constraints, and weak policy language. Limited staff capacity was what most survey respondents stated was a barrier preventing them from adopting successful climate policies that other jurisdictions had already adopted, as seen in this figure here, where limited staff capacity has the greatest number of responses. Additionally, my policy analysis revealed that jurisdictions with larger populations, like Tacoma and Puyallup, had a greater number of policies and policy types, such as education and outreach, that other jurisdictions lacked, and this could be due to their larger size. Another common barrier was financial constraints, which could be seen in the contrast between tree canopy and transportation policies. Tree canopy was stated as a high priority for 61.5% of survey respondents, yet only 34 policies out of over 2,000 contained the keyword tree canopy. The cost of designing and implementing these policies was likely too much to realistically pursue, which could explain why there were so few policies on this topic. However, transportation-related policies were numerous because state-level incentives and joint grant opportunities lessened the financial burden, which allowed jurisdictions greater financial freedom to address certain needs in this sector. Finally, during my review of each climate policy, weak policy language was another barrier I found because I noticed that most of the policies were vague, broad, and offered little to no implementation measures like timelines or other accountability standards. Weaker phrasing like should consider was more often used in policies compared to phrasing like should implement, which shows a stronger commitment that compels jurisdictions to follow through on their actions. Based on these findings, I found that these barriers could be worked to overcome by addressing both the policies themselves as well as collaboration. Policies should utilize more concrete and actionable language, address gaps in what types of policies are created, and use more icons and incentives to make the implementation process more efficient. The figure below shows the number of policies for each policy type across all 22 jurisdictions, and notable gaps could be found in equitable practices, waste reduction, and education and outreach policies. So these are areas that Pierce County specifically must address for stronger climate action. To improve collaboration, jurisdictions should utilize a central leader, regularly share information, and reference published climate action plans that can provide them more guidance. So now I will be discussing the broader significance. So this research is important because out of all the levels of government, local governments are the closest to citizens, and it is at this level where most climate change action is organized. Pierce County jurisdictions can incorporate some of these recommendations into the design of their policies or climate action plans to meet the deadline of House Bill 1181 and for more effective climate work overall. Many areas of climate work transcend conventional jurisdictional boundaries, which means greater cooperation between jurisdictions is especially important in the years to come. I would like to thank my site supervisor, Kyla Wilson, and the ORCA team, my faculty advisor, Neva Stolshak, and my friends and family for their continued encouragement and support throughout this process. Thank you for listening.